Hi. On the other two previous hour of classes I've shared on YouTube, one was on alternative financing, and the other one was on promoting prospecting your daily routine as a realtor or any sales position. I promised you another course that I would do on buyer representation, and this is it. Working successfully with buyers using buyer representation. My name's Carl Mitrak. I've been selling real estate for 47 years. I'm a dinosaur. Most agents last in the business, they say approximately 7 years, 8 years. So I'm on my pushing my seventh life. Buyer representation, you're going to probably see more of it as commissions get reduced. Some states prefer that a buyer have a buyer broker agreement and pay the commission. Generally, if there's enough down payment, the lenders are okay, and they'll factor that into your down payment. Buyer exclusive buyer representation, also called buyer brokerage. There's benefits to the buyer, benefits to the seller, benefits to the agent, of course, and there are buyer representation contracts. And I'm going to share with you a listing presentation that I give to the buyers prior to having them sign an agreement to work exclusively with me, not Aunt Sally that comes out of LA or some other place after I show them and give them the knowledge to make a decision. It's the best way to realtors to get out of the business. These are the blue ribbon agents that also practice buyer representation. You must conquer your fears to obtain true freedom. Courage conquers your fear. And when the first time you do buyer representation, you're going to be afraid. Just like you were probably afraid the first time you got a listing appointment to sell a property of some type. Doing what you are afraid to do is courage. There can be no courage unless you're scared and you want to get your presentation and selling real estate with a buyer representation. You want to get agreement. You want to get that to be in your comfort zone, just like the other aspects of your daily routine that are in your comfort zone now. Asking the buyer to commit is an intangible. Usually they do not see what they are buying first. They see you, they see an agreement. You may show them a presentation, you may show them some properties, but before they sign up on the line, you've got to realize they're committing themselves to you. They can touch you, so I guess maybe you are an intangible, but it's not maybe the house they're going to buy. Of course, you do have in California, there are 3 types of buyer representation agreements, and one of them you may have, if it's not exclusive, with a commission in it, to protect yourself with this one other form that's just called the buyer representation agreement. Committing to an intangible, usually they do not see what they're going to buy first. When you list a house for sale, you see it and you feel it, so does your seller. You got to get people out of their comfort zone. It's new territory for you, but learn it. Do this. A seller's first listing in an appointment that you did, weren't you also scared then? True growth is getting out of your comfort zone early and often. Change is constant in real estate. Get used to changes. We're going to have a lot of more of them now. We're in the fall of 2022. Convince your buyers that your services are real. Why exclusive buyer representation, also called buyer brokerage? We must invest our time, emotion, and knowledge to buyers. Get paid for it. Do you want to show them property for 40 hours, then go on vacation and they bought something in an open house from somebody else that after you've done all the work, got them qualified for a loan, got the approval, explained to them the escrow process, showed them the areas they like, and then they buy from someone else? Get them to commit to you. Special situations, special financing takes extra time. Our risk is limited on the 2 years in California to a field decision, meaning if it's not actual or intentional fraud, the broker is only responsible for 2 years of liability. Otherwise, it could be 8 to 10 years if you don't use one of the forms. One form has nothing relating to commission. I use that form whenever I represent a buyer that walked in an open house, or maybe a dear friend or a past client that I can trust and they can trust me. Contract law, you must have an employment contract to have clients. How many agents call me to show one of the properties I have listed and they say they have a client? I say, oh, you do? Do you have a buyer broker agreement? No, what's that? Oh, I say, you know that they're not a client unless you have a contract. Your brokerage firm, as an agent, you have a contract with your broker. They're not your customer. You're basically a client for your broker, and you're a client if you have a contract. But before you tell people you have a client, when you're showing a property, if there's no written contract, they are a customer. It elevates the buyer to an employment contract. So they are client status. So they have a deeper relationship with you. And you put this into your joint escrow instructions. You have a paper trail. You state who you represent. It's a coming trend. You do this. I do it in California. Other agents I know do it. Hawaii, Colorado. Maybe there's some other ones since I first did this course. Our NOR, National Association of Realtor Statistics, stipulate by their quizzes and research surveys that buyers get a 7% better price when they have a buyer broker. Why? Because we, the agents, don't push them to sell them down the river, because if they don't buy that house, we've got a commitment for them to buy something else. Benefit to the buyer, quality service. Quality service. We believe in ourselves, our quality service, and our future results when we do a seller's listing appointment, don't we? Well, why don't we do the same thing with a buyer? Why do we take our time away from our listed sellers to show people property that we have no commitment with and have no commitment to us? We're doing a disservice for our listing sellers. Get the same service with your buyer. Should we take our time away from loved ones, from sellers, to work with buyers that don't commit with us exclusively? We spend time educating them and, quote, letting them drive around, or they drive us around. I don't drive people around anymore. Are we really being fair to the already committed, our family, our loved ones, our broker, our sellers? Stop the insanity. Stop the insanity. Get commitments from your buyers in writing. Think in your head, buy from me or get out of my car. Buy from me or get out of my car. I'm going to tell you a little bit story when I was selling real estate in Orange County when I was raising my family. I have a dear friend, a realtor. I was working at a Remax company. His name's Jerry. And he was showing some property to some guy. And as he was talking to the guy, and he said, you know, Carl, I'm never going to do this again without meeting the people and at my office first and getting a commitment. So he showed the guy a house and wanted to see some more. So Jerry had a couple other properties to sell. And the guy was talking to him. He goes, well, you know, I'm not going to really buy from you. I just want you to show me around, because I have a sister out of the area who will be writing out the contracts when I find something, because she's an agent. Jerry, I got to give the guy moxie. He pulls over to a gas station with a phone booth and said, get out. I'm near my house here. Get out. I'm going back home. The guy, he goes, go get a cab. Really? I've had a weird one sort of similar like that, but I was a little bit more of a gentleman. I had this guy come down from some other part of Orange County, and he had an appointment with me to show some property, look at some properties. I showed him 2 or 3. He kept looking at his watch. I go, well, what's that? He goes, well, I've got to be back by the beach by 3 o'clock. And I said, oh, why? He goes, well, that's where I have to pick my kids up from the beach. I said, well, are you interested to really seriously to buy a house? He goes, no, I just want to look around and see what's going on down here. I've got a nice house in the Anaheim Hills. I thought to myself, never again. Why did I let him get out of my corral? Why did I cave in? Was I desperate that weekend to do a transaction? Benefits to the buyer. It's a team effort. There's a commitment from the agent in writing. He doesn't have to call the ads or do the internet searches unless they want to, because you're going to do it, right? There's a stronger bargaining position. They stick with you only, saves time. They're not going to listen to Aunt Sally and their neighbor who's a realtor 300 miles away about they're supposed to do that. And you can show them everything. Sometimes now we get these commissions that are a lot less, 1%, 2%, 2.5%, maybe 4%, 5%, 0%. If it's a 0% percentage, do you show that buyer the property? Probably not. How are you going to get paid? If you have a buyer broker agreement that's in this exclusive agreement and there's a commitment from the buyer to pay you whatever the percentage that you negotiate, you can show the for sale by owner. Ethically, we're supposed to show a property if it's a lower commission. Yeah. So get a buyer broker agreement. In the agreement, you put down whatever the percentage that you negotiate between whatever you want to talk about. We're not supposed to talk about commission amounts. And then if the seller pays you an amount, that's credited to the amount that the buyer has an obligation. So let me give you an example. If your agreement says 3% that the buyer's going to pay you, because when you really think about it, doesn't the buyer actually pay the commission anyway? It's just an increased price. And many lenders will allow with a decent down payment for the buyer to pay you through the loan amount. So what do you do here? So in the agreement, on their exclusive agreement, let's say as an example that the buyer is going to pay you 3%. If the commission from the seller is 2.5%, the buyer is credited that 2.5%. So they only pay you 0.5% of the sales price. If you have a 3% commission and the commission is 4%, you give back that other percent to your buyer in escrow. So there's a commitment on the amount. If the seller tries to cave in on you on the counter offer to reduce the sales commission, they can do it, but you're not going to pay it because you got an agreement with your buyer. I started doing this in like 1982. They have their own representative at the beginning. They listen only to one agent. They're not confused by everybody else going to an open house. What I do is I give my buyers my cards, and I have a rubber stamp on the back that says, this party works with me with an exclusive buyer representation agreement. Why? When they go into an open house, they give my card to the open house agent. I'm working with Carl Mitrak at Windermere Real Estate. And the agent that's on the open house, they're happy to know that. This used to be part of our protocol when we actually did an initial orientation for the new agents at an association / board of realtors. We're not really doing that as much now, especially after the pandemic. You find out the buyer's needs, you interview them, you call them, you ask them why. Why do they want to buy? What's important? They feel important too because you're investing time, because they become your client. They're not pressured to buy today before they go down the road to some other agent and go to some other brokerage firm and start all over again. Tax benefits. They could be lowering their property taxes if they pay the commission through the escrow with a different cashier's check or to your brokerage. Some states may prefer that they send a cashier's check to the broker. In our state, we have Proposition 13. Our basic taxes are 1% of the sales price. Then there's add-ons. So if I sell on a commercial or apartment building and it's 8 units and the commission is $60,000, the buyer is going to put 30% down. They just put $60,000 in a cashier's check to my brokerage firm, and they lower their price by that amount of money. And now they're paying 1% or 600. They're paying $600 a year minimum. without the add-ons in taxes per year. So there's some benefits to in California anyways, if you have buyer brokerage and the amount is paid to the broker direct, or sometimes through the as a cost, an amortized cost through the escrow company, and you lower the price. Generally, what I will do on a buyer broker agreement, many times, I will first get my agreement, because the seller wants, say, $550,000, we negotiate at 5.25. Then I'll go back a few days later to the listing agent and say, my buyer wants to pay my commission directly, so we'd like to lower that 2.5%, 3%, 4%, whatever it is, off the sales price. Because basically the buyer pays the price, the commission anyways, through the sales price. It's just basically added on. And I've heard some rumors that in NAR, now they want to eliminate us being paid by the seller. So this might be a very good opportunity in timely time to watch and see this YouTube. Closing costs that the buyer pays on a buyer broker agreement through escrow could be amortized, and give them other tax advantages. Benefits to the seller. They're not responsible for anything the buyer's agent says or does. There's not quite as deep of a sub-agency, because you're putting down directly that I represent the buyer. There's no sub-agency. I always tell the listing agent that I represent a buyer with a contract at first contact. So they're my client. It strengthens and discloses what the relationship will be. You have to the seller, it gives clearly defined roles. I don't know how many times I have sellers when I represent a buyer. I'm paying your commission, you represent me. If I'm working for the buyer, I don't represent the seller. But I am a sub-agent for the seller if I don't have a buyer broker agreement. I've stated in the deposit receipt many times where I check the deposit receipt is the old name for a joint escrow instructions. You can sell it for a sale by owner because your fee is protected. Don't you have an obligation to show your buyer everything that's on the market? So let's say that they like the tract. Let's say it's called Palmyra. I want to live in Palmyra. So you're showing them property, they're driving possibly, or you don't do this, you don't tell them to drive by the for sale by owner. So they're in a car with you, and as you're driving down the street, you know there's a for sale by owner. You don't want them to go to that for sale by owner without you. You have no commitment to the buyer. You go, oh, look at the parrot on the electrical lines. They turn their head and they don't see the for sale by owner sign. You're not representing the buyer when you do that. Your fee's protected. If the buyer's going to pay you your fee, you can knock on the door and say, I have a contract with a buyer. We'd like to see your house. You don't speed up when you're driving by the FSBO. I know agents who have done that. And this is what you tell us FSBO. I represent a buyer willing to pay my service fee. Is that okay with you? Or another one that is good to say is, that's okay with you, isn't it? Don't we build the commission of the price anyways? Sometimes I'll round the commission down. So let's say I'm doing a transaction and I'm going to get a 3% commission on, say, $636,000, and we write up a contract. I may just say to the buyer, let's just modify our agreement, our buyer broker agreement. I'm just going to take a flat fee of $18,000, not $18,680. When I do that, I have a stronger strength with my buyer. They know that I'm not going to try to beat up the price and have them not negotiate as strong for the buyer, because I'm going to pick up another $500 or $600 that's going to cost them $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 or $10,000 more. So it strengthens your relationship with the buyer when you buy a representation agreement. It really does. I hope you'll start using it. Benefits trusted the agent. Kind of give you a little bit of that already. Commitment from the buyer in writing up front. You have control of the buyer. You interview, educate, so that your presentation of what the benefits are. It's just like the deposit receipt close, purchase agreement close, when you different tactics that you use, and you use the same one on this form. What's the date? What's the amount of the price we're going to be looking at? Between 400 to 600? How much down? What neighborhood? How long do you want to do this? It's right in the form. You can write that in. Is your fee protected on a foreclosure or a short sale? No. Now we have some of these agents with these companies that hit the agents up. We want to refer you with our buyers. Do you want to do that? Sign a contract with us for 30% of your commission, and then the commission, say it's 200, say it's a 2% or a 3% commission. So let's play with that. So you want this buyer to buy a house for $300,000. Your commission, say it's a low commission of 2%, that's $6,000. You've got to give 30% of that to the agency or the company that referred you to the buyer. So you're down to $4,000. And now you've got to give your broker, what, 10, 15, 20%? Let's say 20%. Someone's 25, let's just say 25. Now you're down to $3,000. And from the $3,000, you got to pay probably 20, 30% in IRS taxes. So you made 28, maybe 18, $2,200 on a sale. No, stop the insanity. Get a buyer broker agreement. You're protected. What if the commission, they try to squeeze you on the counter offer? Well, we're going to take 10 off the price, but we want to take $1,000, $2,000 off your commission. You've got to take that back to your buyer. You can't, snowball them. So then what, you cave in? Benefits to the agent. No worries while you're on vacation or taking the day off. As I mentioned on the open house, when you do a buyer broker agreement, give some cards to your buyer. Give them your card when you go to a house. They'll bird dog for you. Hey, Carl, we saw another house. It's not a 2-story. I know that you told us that you have another buyer who wants a 1-story. Well, there's a 1-story on Elm Street because you're a team. You counsel and you interview the buyer first. You get them qualified as a lender. Just like having a listed seller, there's an exclusive agreement. Get paid for your time, for your knowledge. An old adage, ask and you shall receive. Your liability is limited, as I mentioned, in 2 years. I would rather lose a buyer in 1 hour with an interview than 40 hours of driving them around a car or talking to them or doing all the other stuff we do prior to writing an offer. And then I lose them because they bought from Aunt Sally down at the other office. Can't do that. I don't want to do that anymore, and I don't want you to do it. Don't waste your time and effort when you can do other things with your time and your money and your mileage on your car. Lose a buyer in an hour by interviewing him. Get a commitment from them up front. Yes, you may show them one house that they call you on an ad or something. Yeah, then sit down at that house. Tell them you want to come in and have them come back to the office. Work smarter. Work smarter. Please work smarter. Lose them in an hour, not 40. Don't be too squeamish about your actions. All life is an experiment. Quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. You want your place in the sun, you must leave the shade of the tree. You got to sweat a little bit. Practice this. Practice, get out the agreements and look at them, review them. Know each. I get so freaked out when agents have a TC or an assistant that's not licensed writing up an offer, because the agent, the real estate licensee, does not know the clauses or cannot explain the contract to the buyer or seller. One doesn't discover new lands without consenting to lose the sight of the shore for a very long time. You can take that all the way back to the 1600s forward. Our services are a thing. Don't confuse or fear of rejection of our services as rejection of ourselves. Remember this. They're separate. When somebody doesn't hire you, it's not because of you personally. It's because of the rejection of our services. Somebody else did a better job on explaining their services. Our services are commodities. and if not utilized by the prospect, has little to do with our personality. Those are two things you might want to write down. Don't get disappointed if you lose a buyer or a seller. Play the odds. The only people who never fail are those who never try. The acceptance of what is offered is a result of perception by the prospect. In their judgment, it will satisfy their needs when purchasing real estate. So they're judging us by their perception of our services. Buyers who buy, buy. Buyers who don't buy, don't buy. We all get these buyers that we tell them about a property, we show them a property, they don't buy, they don't buy, they don't buy. They don't get loan approved, they don't do the processing. They're not buyers. Buyers who want to buy will buy. They'll get to a lender. They'll do everything they need to do that you ask them to do so they can buy a property. So don't work with these people that don't buy. I remember years in my beginning when I had a beat up 1960 Carmen Ghia with no reverse, and I had some lady in my car. She was a teacher, and she was yep. It's like this condo, She never bought. I don't know what she was doing, but she never bought anything. Buyers who want to buy will buy. Buyers who don't buy, don't buy. You can't convince a don't buyer to buy. There's my website. There's my phone number if you need to call me. I'm a member of the Real Estate Buyers Council. I get that ABR designation. That's their phone number if you want to learn about being a buyer broker. You can practice buyer brokerage without any kind of tests. However, to get to be a buyer representative, you have to give documentation that you've done something between 4 to 8 transactions with a buyer representation agreement. That's how it qualifies you for that designation. There are 3 different CAR, California Association of Buyer forms. One has nothing to do with commission. Another one has to do with commission. That's a non-exclusive agreement saying they can still go to somebody else and you cannot get paid. I just kind of think that's a waste of a form. The best one is the one that has the number 3, the exclusive buyer representation form. And that's the one where I mentioned to you, and your state has a form like this, and it talks about crediting the amount of money, putting how much you expect from the buyer. If there's an amount credited by the seller, that amount that you get is credited to the buyer. Review your forms. And I could share the forms with you, but they could be different than other forms in your state, and I don't want to confuse you with that. So here's my buyer's listing presentation. First thing when I bring the screen up to a buyer, and I'll sit them in an office like this where I have the big screen on the TV, or I also have a screen that goes behind my empty screen in the back of my notebook here, and I plug it in, and I have a screen that they can look at on the other side of me, so they're not sitting right next to me on an angle, especially with the pandemic. And I ask them, Mr. and Mrs. McGillicuddy, why do you want to buy? What's the main reason why you want to buy a home? Is it the home ownership? Is it tax advantages? Is it an investment? Are we going to live in a home? You're going to be in it 1 year, 2 years? Do you have your tax advantages? And they usually brag about their income. Or do they need a home for maybe schooling, or to be near a church, or to be by their godmother or their aunt or their grandmother or their daughter or sister, whomever. So I want to play with what is the main reason they want to buy, if it's a house. If it's an income property, I know it's probably going to come down to investment potential, because I use the same form for investors. I don't want them going to 16 other people because they're an investor. Then when I'm showing them property and talking about property, I use one of these main reasons as the benefits that they're seeking. I tell them I'm a multiple listing member. I can show them any property. If they see an ad in the paper, or if they're going to go to the ancillary services that take our information that we give, and then they repackage it on Zillow, Trillium, and all these other places, let me know. If they see if they're driving around, see a yard sign, give me the phone number, give me the address. I'll check it out. That's my job. I discuss a home protection plan with them. Ask them if they're going to want one, so I know up front. I discuss a property inspection. Are they going to want to do one? If they don't, I'm going to let them know that there's going to be a waiver. You need to get into the homes that fit your parameters so we can close quickly if we need to. You have to be approved by a lender. Do you have a lender? If not, I'll represent one for you. Then I show them what the home buying process is if they never bought before. Right now, sign up, property, write an offer, negotiate, go to contract accepted, earnest money, mortgage company, underwriting, loan approval, title search, inspections, settlement, possession. They love this form. If you want to make a copy of it, if you can print it here or something, or do it on your camera and print it, it's a nice little form. It's missing some other components, but this is the basic that people need to know about. And they go, I've never seen that before. So they need to know the process. Do they have the right house? Advantage of working with me. You'll become very familiar with how I work. You'll have confidence in my abilities. They can look at my testimonials on a website, or I may have that for them. I should probably put some testimonials up here. That'd be a good idea, wouldn't it? Yeah, I'll do that. Develop rapport. How do you want to communicate? Do you communicate by text? I hope not. Email? Phone calls? How are we going to communicate? I need to know your needs. There are other people that I work with, escrow, title, termite, inspectors, insurance companies. So you get it. There is a team, people that you're going to never see that in the background doing our work. There are over 17 entities that work on our transaction, Mr. and Mrs. McGillicuddy. Did you know that? 17 different types of companies that are involved. When you hire me, I'm there for you and my team. And my team changes. I'm responsible for making you happy. I'm the hub. I'm the responsible person. I'm accountable during the escrow process. Yes, I may have assistants that help me, but you're going to talk to me most of the time. You'll talk to the escrow company, but I'm going to be processing and watching the paperwork as it's processed. I can offer you financial information, knowledge of the neighborhood, appropriate houses to consider, and I will actively do the effort to find you the right home. I will commit to you. And I feel one of my best strengths is negotiating. I grew up in a rough area in North Long Beach, Compton. Sometimes I had to negotiate just to get home from school on my bike without losing my tennis shoes. And I'm not a big guy, I'm like 5'6", and it seems like the big guys always want to deal with the small guys. So you don't negotiate with your mouth, you're negotiating with your fists. Now we negotiate with our pens. I discuss agency, commonplace for both the broker who lists the property and selling broker who works with the buyer, the co-broker, to be paid by the owner. If they pay me, you don't. Their duties, loyalties, faithfulness are owed to their principal and must tell them all their important information. The agent or broker can provide you with information about properties, financing, and opportunities to see property. When I work with a party that could be I don't want to say the word actor or actresses. Somebody famous, we do a buyer broker agreement and they don't put their name on it. We just put down probably an LLC or a corporation or possibly one of their family's members. And then we say that we're going to assign this. After we negotiate, we assign We'll say, well, we will assign the buyer within 5 days of acceptance of the offer, so your time ready to put in the title company. The first thing they want to do if they're a famous person is buy a property or negotiate on a property and say, oh, that person's rich and famous. No, we're going to counter them full price. Negotiating is the most fun part of my job. There's another parties of agency. We both will treat you honestly. They have to present all offers, disclose all material facts. If you choose a real estate broker that exempts you as your own agent, you should enter into a written contract. Clearly establishes the obligations of both parties. Sets out how you will be paid and how you will pay. Benefits, you get my loyalty. You get my obedience to your lawful instructions. Disclosure of all material facts. If I lose you because of disclosure, I'm not going to hide something because I'll find you another price. Now in California, unless the seller agrees to it, we're not supposed to give a letter to the seller's agent as to the description of our buyer. Benefits to the buyer, confidentiality, discussions, facts, information that does not need to be revealed to the seller. So there's a stronger negotiation party because I am your agent. You are my client. I will use my reasonable skill and care on negotiating for you and advising you about discovering material facts. Because I know in my transactions, I know some sellers, when I represent a buyer, who have concealed some items. We'll discuss closing costs. Generally, in California, you can figure your closing costs, including the loan fees, are going to be 1.5% of the sales price, what makes it real easy to figure out what they're going to have to put in for down payment and closing costs. Just 1.5%. So $6,000 or $600,000 house, and probably about $9,000 with everything. It's a nice, easy fact without having to give them a big old 30-line item form, which I'm able to do. A lot of agents, by the way, cannot do that. I know some people who have lost transactions because the buyers say, "Well, I don't want to sign for a purchase contract until I know what my closing costs are going to be," and the agents say, "Well, I'll get that for you on Monday or Tuesday from an escrow company." So they don't write an offer. And then they find it, then there's another buyer that comes and beats them out of the house because the agent doesn't know how to do a buyer closing cost form. By mutual agreement, if I'm willing to put my effort, commit my time, incur my car, phone, do the search until you find the home or stop coming to stop, will you tell me if your plans change? Tell me if you want to increase your price, lower your price, if you want to go to another broker. If you don't like at the house, let me know. If you feel the need to talk to another agent and not me, will you let me know? Will you work with me until we find your home? See, and now I'm kind of at the end of my listing presentation, but back to you. Procrastinations of fear of success. People procrastinate because they're afraid of the success they know will result if they move ahead. Well, I'm not going to try a higher brokerage. I've been doing it 8 years the way I have, and I'm only losing 40% of my buyers that are buying from someone else. How many times do you want to lose 40% of your buyers? Success is heavy, carries a responsibility with it. It is much easier to procrastinate and live on a someday I'll do it philosophy. So I'm really recommending that you review this a few times and that you look at your state association or your laws in your state and see what forms you have to work with buyers. You're going to see more of this as these commissions keep diminishing. How are you going to get paid? How are you going to make a living? Are we going to get to the point where a buyer has to go directly to the seller's agent and not have a buyer's agent? Is that what's going to happen to us? Buy from me. I told you earlier. Or get out of my car. No. Do it this way. Buy from me or stay out of my car. When I do a class, I have a big shirt, and I break the class in half. Half of the class says, "Buy for me," and the other side says, "Or stay out of my car." The best risk in the world is not taking any risk. Many of the concepts right here say new to you and risky. Life is an experiment. Don't burn out in 7 years with uncommitted buyers. Don't do that to yourself. Don't do that, please. If you put time and energy getting your license, take your time and energy and learn some of these guidelines, these theories that will take you back to being and make you more of a blue ribbon agent. Thanks. That's sort of the end, but here you go. Because what I would do now, generally, I would bring this form back, this little page back to the buyer. Can we work together? Can we sign up now? Do you agree? Can you call me? So here you go. If you want to write this down, that's my website. If you want to Gmail me, there's my cell number. Here's my Department of Real Estate license. I need to give you that, though I'm not advertising here for your business. If you're a lay person, by obligation, state law, I need to give you my license in case you inherently think that this is an ad. Sure, I like that business, but I'm not doing this as an ad. I'm doing it for a learning curve for people that need to know this. Department License number 005-19085. Bye-bye. I wish you the best. Take care and be safe. Carl Mitran. Love my job. I love people.